Hello everyone, I am Ankur and today I'll be presenting our work, When Can Transformers Ground and Compose? Insights from Compositional Generalization Benchmarks. This is a joint work with Arkil Patel and Navin Goyal from Microsoft Research India. Human language is characterized by systematic compositionality, which means that we can understand and produce potentially infinite number of novel combinations from known components. In addition, the natural language utterances are often grounded, meaning that they invoke idea of some physical concepts in the real world. So for example, as humans, if we have encountered a white husky and a black cat in our life, then we can very easily infer how a black husky would look like, even if we have never seen one. Because we can very well compose the concept of black color with the concept of a husky dog. It's a very trivial task for humans to compose such known concepts in novel ways. Such compositional and grounded language understanding in humans is what makes our learning so data efficient. But similar kind of generalization is not that trivial for current AI models. In our work, we address this question of whether our AI models are capable of such compositional generalization. Several benchmarks have been proposed in last few years like SCAN, gSCAN, and most recently ReaSCAN to study these problems. These benchmarks basically involve a synthetic navigation task where the input to the model is a command and a 2D grid world with some initial state. And the model is supposed to output a sequence of action tokens to execute the given command. The main challenge in these tasks is that a single model has to generalize over multiple different compositional testing splits. These splits contain particular combinations of known concepts that were held out from the training set. For example, in the ReaSCAN dataset, the model encounters the concept of red square and a yellow circle during training, but never encounters a yellow square. During test time, the model is then expected to zero-shot generalize to yellow square by composing the known concepts of yellow and square. Similarly, for another split, during training, the model is shown examples where phrases like blue circle and blue square co-occur in the command, but the model never encounters the phrases red circle and blue square co-occurring in one particular command. During testing, the model is then presented with such novel co-occurrences of phrases in the command. Other compositional splits in ReaSCAN evaluate generalization to novel clause length, novel relative clauses, and more. To address these tasks, we build upon previous architectures and identify key modifications in a multi-model transformer architecture to propose a stronger baseline. Specifically, our method uses an encoder-decoder architecture where the encoder consists of two streams, the language stream for processing the input command and the vision stream for processing the world state. For the language stream, the input command is tokenized and the corresponding embeddings along with the position encoding are fed to the stream. For the visual stream, previous methods used CNNs to encode the world state. But we, instead of using CNNs, directly tokenize each cell of the grid world and feed it into the stream along with the position encodings. In addition, we also interleave self-attention layers in between co-attention layers in the encoder. We found that all these modifications majorly influence the compositional generalization abilities of our model. Finally, the encoder representation is fed to the decoder, which auto-regressively generates the action sequence for executing the command. Here we show the results for our model on ReaSCAN benchmark. Our method outperforms previous models by a significant margin, even when some of these previous models had very specialized architectures specific to the ReaSCAN task. These results indicate that with some specific design choices, a general multi-model transformer architecture can very well generalize to different compositional splits in such tasks. Our overall results and almost perfect accuracies on some splits like A1, A3 suggest that transformers do have some inductive biases for compositional generalization. Please refer to our paper for additional results and ablation studies on other benchmarks. Next, we found that a particular split in ReaSCAN, that is C2 split, which tests depth generalization in models, is unfair in that the training data does not provide the model with sufficient information to correctly choose among competing hypotheses to learn. Therefore, in order to investigate whether transformers can generalize to higher depths, we introduce an amended version of that split, which we call C2 deeper. Here, during training, the model is shown commands with two recursive relative clauses, essentially commands with a recursion depth of 2, while the testing split evaluates the model on commands of recursion depth of 3. On this split, our model achieved 85.6% accuracy. This was surprising because contrary to results in prior works that showed that transformers struggle with depth generalization, our results suggest otherwise, that transformers do generalize to higher depths in this particular setting. We perform further analysis on our model to investigate where is the bottleneck. Is it in the target localization step or in the path planning? To this end, we added a linear probe over the encoder to perform target localization. We basically first freeze the weights of our model and then train a linear layer over the encoder representations to localize the target. we found that out of all examples where the ReaSCAN model failed, in 88% of them, the target localization model also failed, indicating that target localization, which essentially encompasses the compositional generalization aspect, is the main bottleneck for models in ReaSCAN tasks. The surprising performance of transformers on such compositional generalization benchmarks led us to create our own dataset called RefEx, in order to investigate how transformers ground and reason compositionally on such tasks. In RefEx, we basically boiled down the entire ReaSCAN task to just target localization, where based on a given expression describing a target object, the model is required to localize it in the grid world. Moreover, RefEx also includes multiple compositional testing splits to evaluate generalization abilities of the models. RefEx is a simpler, grounded compositional generalization task and therefore allows easier probing and interpretation of the learned models. We propose 3 task variants with different complexities. First, we have the 2 attribute variant where the expression contains 1 color attribute and 1 shape attribute. So in this example, the model is required to localize the blue circle in the grid world. Next, we have the 3 attribute variant where in addition to the shape and color attribute, we also have a relative size attribute. Here in this example, the model is required to localize the small blue square in the grid world. And last, we have 3 attribute with relation variant. Here the expressions describe the target object in relation to a referent object. In this example, the model is required to locate the green square object, which is of the same size as the red cylinder object. To effectively study grounding and composition, we also simplified our model and chose to use attention-only transformers with no MLP. In our model, we first tokenize the input expressions and the grid world, concatenate them, and pass them through an embedding layer. Then that representation is fed through a repeated blocks of self-attention. Finally, we perform a 36-way classification where each class corresponds to different cell locations in the grid world. Again, note that this model contains only self-attention blocks, and we have these residual connections but no MLPs here, unlike the default transformer models. We tested this model on the 2 attribute variant of our task. On a higher level, to perform this task, the model needs to first ground the color attribute and the shape attribute to the grid world, and then compose both these attributes to localize the correct target object. Surprisingly, we found that a single self-attention layer with only a single head achieves 100% accuracy on all compositional test splits. Subsequently, we evaluate our model on the 3 attribute variant, which is more difficult than 2 attribute variant. To solve this task variant, the model needs to ground and compose 3 different attributes, namely the shape, color, and size, where size is a relative attribute and requires complex relative reasoning. To our surprise, here as well we found that a single self-attention layer with just a single head is enough for 100% compositional generalization. Finally, we derive an explicit and interpretable construction of the learned model, which demonstrates the detailed computations corresponding to grounding and composition in the network. Please refer to our paper for further details on the constructions and more details on RefEx. For conclusion, first we showed that with correct design choices, general multimodal transformers can compositionally generalize on tasks like ReaSCAN and gSCAN. We identified that target localization, which essentially involves compositional generalization, is the main bottleneck for models in ReaSCAN tasks. We found that multimodal transformers are capable of generalizing systematically to higher recursion depths in our setting. Moreover, we propose a new task, RefEx, to study grounding and composition in transformers. We show that self-attention layers are surprisingly very efficient at grounding and composing multiple visual attributes. Finally, we derive an explicit construction for the model that captures the model's behavior and completely describes grounding and composing at computation level. Thank you.